Let me tell you something that a lot of people are scared to admit. Just because there is no contact, just because there are no calls, no texts, no late night, I miss you. Messages, that does not mean you disappeared from his mind. Silence does not mean absence. Sometimes silence is just pride sitting on top of pain. Let me slow this down and speak straight to your heart, because this first truth is where most people get it wrong. Men do not forget emotionally the way the world assumes they do. A man may stop calling, stop texting, stop showing up, but that does not mean the feelings packed their bags and left with him. Men don't process emotions by talking about, they process them by burying them. And what you bury doesn't disappear, it waits. When a man truly connects with a woman, it's not just about attraction or convenience. It's about how she made him feel about himself. Did he feel understood? Did he feel respected? Did he feel like he could be himself without pretending? Those feelings don't fade just because the relationship ends. Those feelings become memories, and memories don't ask for permission to come back. They show up in quiet moments. They show up when he hears a song. They show up when he laughs at something and realizes you're the first person he wants to share it with, but can't. See, a man's mind works differently. He can move forward in life while still being emotionally tied to the past. He can smile in public and ache in private. He can act fine while replaying moments that meant everything to him. He remembers the way you looked at him when he doubted himself. He remembers the way you believed in him before he believed in himself. And those memories don't lose their power just because time passes. A lot of women think if he cared, he would reach out, but caring doesn't always lead to action. Sometimes caring leads to restraint. Sometimes caring means he knows that calling you would open a door he's not ready to walk through. So instead, he chooses silence, not because he's unaffected, but because he's affected too deeply. And here's something else people don't talk about. Men often realize what they lost after it's gone. While the relationship is happening, he may not fully grasp your value. But once you're no longer there to give, to support, to show up, that absence becomes noticeable. That's when reflection begins. That's when he starts measuring what life feels like without you in it. Men remember women who changed them, not women who entertained them for a season, but women who shifted their perspective, challenged their habits, and made them feel seen. Those women leave a mark, and that mark doesn't wash off easily. Even years later, a man can still think about the woman who represented peace, stability, or genuine love in his life. So if you're sitting there wondering whether you ever cross his mind, understand this: if the connection was real, you do. Maybe not every minute, maybe not every day, but enough to matter, enough to linger, enough to remind him of what was once good, safe and meaningful. Silence doesn't erase emotional impact, and distance doesn't rewrite history. What was real still exists in his memory, in his heart, and in the quiet spaces he doesn't talk about. Let me tell you something most people won't say out loud. No contact hurts him too, even if he never admits it, even if he never shows it, even if he looks like he moved on faster than you did. Men are trained from a very young age to hide emotional pain. They're taught that strength means silence, that vulnerability is weakness, and that expressing feelings makes them look less like men. So instead of saying, "I'm hurting," a man distracts himself. He stays busy. He fills his schedule. He keeps his phone moving. But none of that means he's healed. When there is no contact, the mind doesn't rest. It works overtime. Silence creates space, and space forces reflection. That's when thoughts you were avoiding start knocking. He starts remembering conversations he didn't finish, apologies he never gave, and moments where he could have shown up better but didn't. During the relationship, distractions are easy because you're there. After the separation, distractions become louder because you're not. Men don't always feel pain immediately. Sometimes it comes later, once the ego calms down. At first, there may be relief. Relief from arguments, expectations, or pressure. But relief doesn't last forever. Eventually, routine sets in, and that's when the emptiness shows up. He reaches for his phone without realizing it. He wants to share a thought, a joke, a win, and then he remembers you're no longer there. That realization stings more than any argument ever did. Here's the part many women misunderstand. Him not reaching out doesn't mean he's unaffected. Often it means he's fighting himself, fighting the urge to break no contact, fighting the fear of reopening wounds, fighting the possibility that you've changed, moved on, or no longer want him. Men fear rejection deeply, even if they act confident. The risk of hearing indifference in your voice can feel worse than staying silent. And then there are the nights. Nights are honest. Nights don't care about pride or image. When the noise dies down and the world gets quiet, emotions surface. That's when memories replay without warning. The laughter, the comfort, the way you made him feel at home. That's when the absence becomes loud. That's when the no contact feels heavy. Men don't always grieve relationships the same way women do. Women often feel everything up front. Men often delay it. But delayed pain doesn't mean lesser pain. It just means it arrives later, sometimes stronger. By the time he truly feels the loss, you may already be healing. And that realization alone can hurt him even more. No contact removes your presence, but it magnifies your impact. Without you there to soften life, he notices what you brought into it: peace, support, understanding. And once that's gone, it's impossible to unfeel the difference. He may never say it, he may never show it, but make no mistake, no contact doesn't mean no pain. It just means he's hurting quietly, in ways the world never gets to see. Let me speak on a truth that goes deeper than silence and distance. If you truly mattered to him, you still matter. Time, space, and no contact do not erase emotional significance. People don't forget the ones who touch their soul. They learn how to live without them. And those are two very different things. A man can move forward with his life while still carrying the weight of what you meant to him. Men don't forget women who changed them. They forget faces, names, conversations, but they don't forget transformation. If you were the woman who challenged his thinking, softened his rough edges, or made him feel understood in a world where he rarely felt seen, that impact stays. It becomes part of who he is. Even if he never speaks your name again, your influence shows up in how he loves, how he protects himself, and how he approaches future relationships. Here's something most people don't realize men compare silently. When a man meets someone new, he doesn't start from zero. He measures. He notices what's missing. He notices what feels different. If you brought peace into his life, chaos elsewhere feels louder. If you offered emotional safety, shallow connections feel empty. And every comparison pulls your memory back into his mind, even when he's trying not to think about you. If you mattered, you're tied to moments he can't recreate. Inside jokes, shared routines, quiet understanding, those things can't be copied. That's why certain memories resurface randomly. A place you used to go, a phrase you used to say, a habit you influenced. Suddenly, you're there again, not physically, but emotionally. And that presence lingers longer than he expects. Some men move on quickly on the surface, not because they're healed, but because they're avoiding feeling. Replacing a connection is easier than sitting with the loss of it. But replacement doesn't equal resolution. You can't substitute depth with distraction forever. Eventually, the emotional debt comes due. And when it does, the memory of the woman who mattered resurfaces with clarity. Men rarely talk about this because admitting it feels like vulnerability. It feels like admitting loss, and pride often keeps them silent. But silence doesn't mean indifference. It often means the feelings are still too real to put into words. And here's the hardest part for many women to accept: even if you still matter to him, it doesn't always mean he'll come back. Sometimes a man knows what he lost, but also knows he doesn't deserve it anymore. That awareness can create distance, not because love is gone, but because guilt, regret, or fear stand in the way. So if you're questioning whether you ever really meant something to him, understand this: people don't forget what shaped them. They don't forget what felt like home. They don't forget the love that required them to grow. If you mattered once, you didn't stop mattering just because the relationship ended. You became part of his story, and stories don't disappear. They live on quietly in the background of the mind. Let me tell you a truth that's uncomfortable but necessary to hear. Sometimes the reason he doesn't reach out has nothing to do with a lack of love and everything to do with fear. Fear is powerful, especially for men who are taught that control equals strength. Reaching out means risking something, and for many men, that risk feels heavier than the pain of staying silent. A man may want to call you and still not do it. He may replay conversations in his head, imagine what he would say, even pick up his phone and put it back down. Why? Because contacting you means opening a door he's not sure he can close again. It means facing emotions he worked hard to suppress. It means admitting that you still have an effect on him. And that kind of vulnerability terrifies a man who prides himself on being composed and in control. There's also the fear of rejection. Men feel rejection deeply, even if they act unbothered. Hearing a cold tone in your voice, sensing distance, or realizing you've moved on can hit his ego and his heart at the same time. So instead of risking that pain, he chooses the safer route: silence. Silence protects his pride, even though it costs him emotionally. Another layer of fear is regret. Sometimes a man knows he messed up. He knows he didn't show up the way he should have. He knows he took you for granted or didn't value you until you were gone. Reaching out would force him to confront that truth. And accountability is heavy. It's easier to stay quiet than to admit, I was wrong and I lost something good. Fear also shows up as uncertainty. He may not know where you stand. He may wonder if you still care, if reaching out would disrupt your healing. That uncertainty freezes him. Men like clarity and control, and when they don't have either, they often do nothing at all. What many women don't realize is that silence can be a form of self-protection. Not because he doesn't care, but because he cares too much and doesn't trust himself to handle the emotions that would come flooding back. Hearing your voice could undo months of emotional restraint. Seeing your name pop up could reopen wounds he's barely managed to close. And then there's pride. Pride convinces a man that staying away is strength. Pride tells him that if you wanted him, you'd reach out. Pride whispers that time will fix everything. But pride often disguises fear. Fear of being seen, fear of being exposed, fear of wanting something he's afraid he can't have again. So when you look at his silence, don't immediately translate it as indifference. Silence can mean he's standing at an emotional crossroads, unsure which step will hurt less. Sometimes distance is not about moving on, it's about not knowing how to come back without losing himself in the process. Let me tell you something powerful, something that shifts the entire dynamic without you saying a single word. Your growth during no contact is what keeps you on his mind. Not your silence alone, not your absence by itself, but the way you choose yourself when you stop chasing him. When you step back, stop explaining, stop proving, and stop trying to be understood by someone who already knows your worth, something changes. The energy changes, and men feel energy shifts even when they don't fully understand them. When you are always available, always responsive, always ready to fix things, he never had to sit with the weight of losing you. But no contact removes the safety net. It removes the reassurance that you'll always be there no matter what he does. And that absence forces reflection. He begins to wonder what you're doing, how you're feeling, and whether you're okay without him. That curiosity is powerful because it's rooted in uncertainty, and uncertainty gets stuck in the mind. Growth looks quiet from the outside, but it's loud emotionally. When you stop reacting, stop posting for attention, stop trying to get a response, it signals strength. It tells him you're no longer revolving around his choices. That's when he starts questioning his own. He may not see your progress directly, but he senses it. Men are highly aware when a woman who once centered them no longer does. There's also something humbling about realizing someone you had access to is no longer accessible in the same way. No contact shows him that your presence in his life was not guaranteed, it was a privilege. And once that privilege is gone, the value of it becomes clear. That's when thoughts like, did I really lose her, begin to surface. Your growth changes the power dynamic. Instead of waiting, you're becoming. Instead of hoping, you're healing. And that shift disrupts him emotionally because it challenges the version of you he thought would always be there. Men often don't realize the depth of a woman's strength until she stops pouring it into them. No contact also allows him to feel the consequences of his actions without interruption. When you stop cushioning the impact of his choices, reality sets in. He feels the absence of your support, your understanding, your presence. And that absence creates space for awareness. What keeps you on his mind is not manipulation, it's authenticity. You choosing peace over chaos, self-respect over chasing, growth over stagnation. When a woman evolves, she becomes unforgettable, not because she demands attention, but because she no longer needs it. So while he's wondering about you, you're rebuilding yourself. And that's the part that matters most. Whether he comes back or not becomes secondary, because the version of you that emerges from no contact is stronger, clearer, and no longer defined by his silence. Let me leave you with the deepest truth of all, the one that changes how you see everything. This was never about controlling his mind or forcing him to come back. The real purpose of no contact was to bring you back to yourself. Somewhere along the way, while loving him, you may have lost pieces of your peace, your confidence, your identity. You started measuring your worth by his attention, your happiness by his effort, your value by how much he chose you. No contact interrupts that cycle. When communication stops, something uncomfortable happens. You're forced to sit with yourself. The silence that once felt unbearable slowly becomes a teacher. It shows you where you compromised too much, where you stayed quiet to keep the peace, where you accepted less than you deserved. That awareness is painful at first, but it's also empowering. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. This stage is where real strength is built. Not the loud, performative kind, but quiet resilience. You learn how to self-soothe instead of seeking validation. You learn how to fill your own cup instead of waiting for someone else to pour into you. And as you do this, your energy shifts. You stop looking for him in everything. You stop checking your phone with hope and anxiety mixed together. Slowly, you reclaim your emotional independence. And here's the irony. This is often the moment when he feels you the most. Not because you're trying to be noticed, but because you're no longer reaching for him. Detachment creates clarity. When you step out of his orbit, he finally sees the space you once filled. But whether he recognizes it or not stops being your concern. No contact teaches you discernment. You begin to understand that missing someone does not mean you should return to them. Love without respect is not love, it's attachment. And attachment fades when self-respect grows. You start asking better questions. Did he meet me emotionally? Did he protect my heart? Did I feel safe being myself? These questions shift the narrative from why wasn't I enough to was this enough for me? This is where power truly returns to you, not power over him, but power over your choices. You no longer wait to be chosen. You choose yourself. You no longer need closure from him. You create it internally. And that kind of closure is permanent. So whether he comes back with apologies or stays silent forever, you're no longer the same woman who started no contact. You're wiser, you're stronger, you're grounded. And that growth ensures one thing: you will never lose yourself again trying to hold on to someone who couldn't fully hold you.